Is renting a house actually a waste of money? You've probably heard the expressions, why pay the landlord's mortgage when you can pay on your own? And if you're renting, you're simply throwing money away. But is renting really a waste of money? However, although it is true that renting may result in a wider network than buying a house, in practice, having a property has worked out better for the majority of individuals over the long haul. Read on to learn why owning a home isn't the only long-term solution. Hey, let's talk renting versus buying a home. First and foremost, when you rent a place to live, you are not just throwing your money away. Rather, you are receiving something in return for it. A place to live. You are simply renting a space for a period of time that has no future worth once your payments have been stopped. However, instead of renting space, you are really renting money when you purchase a home. The distinction is that the money you have borrowed is used to purchase an asset that will presumably rise in value, and you also happen to be able to live in it. A mortgage payment is made up of a combination of rent on the money you've borrowed, also known as interest, and a payment against a remainder of the money you've borrowed. For the purpose of this analysis, let's assume two brothers, Owen the owner and Roger the renter, each of whom has $35,000 in their bank accounts and no debt for the time being. The only difference between the two brothers is that Owen wants to buy a house today and Roger wants to rent. Both brothers live in Toronto. Don't worry, we'll change a few of these assumptions later on. So, to begin, each of them has a net worth of $35,000. Let's start with Owen, the owner, who wants to purchase a $500,000 property with an 85% down payment of $2,500, which implies he will need to borrow $475 to complete the purchase. Mortgage default insurance costs $14,963 and is added to his mortgage total, resulting in a beginning mortgage debt of $489,963, while the provincial property transfer tax in Toronto amounts to $6,475. The City of Toronto also imposes an extra municipal land transfer tax in the amount of $5,725. However, there are both provincial and municipal refunds available, which together equal to $5,725 in tax relief. The provincial sales tax on mortgage default insurance is $1,197, and legal expenses might be as high as $1,000 and title insurance as low as $500 depending on the state. The home inspection charge is $500 and the appraisal fees may be an additional $300 for the total of $34,972 in expenses. That essentially consumes Owen's $35,000 in cash, but he now has another asset in the form of a property worth $500,000 and a liability in the form of a mortgage of $489,963, which he may use to pay off his debt. Currently, he has a net worth of $10,037. Roger, the tenant, doesn't have to pay any money up advance. All he has to do is locate a place to live and sign a rental agreement. The house next door is identical to the $500,000 house but is being rented for $2,100 per month. As a result, at the beginning of year 1, his net worth has not changed. It is still $35,000 due to the large upfront costs associated with purchasing a home. Only Owen The owner's net worth is less than Rogers the rancher's net worth once they receive the keys to their new homes. Then we have to look at the ongoing cash flows. If only Owen the owner can get a 3% fixed rate mortgage for a 5-year term, his monthly mortgage payment will be $2,318.73. If we assume he budgets 1.25% of the home's value per year for maintenance and repairs, that's $520.83 per month to begin with. Property taxes in Toronto are 0.73% currently for a monthly cost of $301.25. Property insurance might start at $80 per Roger. Roger the renter merely has to pay an additional $20 per month to his total for renter's insurance and he'll be ready to go. His total monthly commitment at this point is $2,120 per month, and we'll assume his premium will grow every year in line with the general inflation rate. If we want to compare apples to apples, we must factor in Roger the renter committing the same cash flow per month to his overall situation. To do this, we subtract Rogers' monthly obligation of $2,120 from $3,220 to get $1,100, which means Roger the renter will pay $2,120 per month for rent, and you could commit $1,100 per month to also purchasing an asset, which in this case would be an investment portfolio, to make a mathematically apples to apples comparison. Now, fast forward to 25 years and imagine they are both leaving the country. The owner sells his property and the gain is tax-free. Roger, the renter, has been paying taxes on investment dividends all along and has a capital gain when he sells his whole portfolio on an inflation-corrected basis. Was renting a total waste of time in the first place? A lot will depend on how quickly the housing prices in the portfolio grow over time. According to a TD Economics report from 2013 called Long Run Rate of Return for Canadian Home Prices, which suggested that 3.5% before inflation was a long-term growth rate for housing. They also put out a report in 2012 that looked at long-term returns for equity markets, which suggested that 7% was appropriate, with some cabinets using the term long-term return for equity markets. His home now is $1,102,000 and he has no debt, so he has no obligations. Selling his property would cost $64,000 after deducting the cost of a 5% realtor commission, GST, and legal expenses, which leaves him with $1,118,000, adjusted for inflation, resulting in a net value of $681,000. Following a 25-year period of renting, Roger's portfolio has grown to $1 million and $25,000 after deducting the tax drag of distributions paid along the way. Because he had no more use for his assets, he has no liabilities, and his net worth is $578,000 after adjusting for inflation. We've just seen how renting does not necessitate a higher net worth. What if or when the owner moves a few times? He'll incur transaction costs to sell his first house and then new costs to purchase a second house. If he moves every 10 years, the costs will reduce his ending net worth of $553,000, implying that Roger the renter would have had a higher net worth at the end of 25 years than he did at the beginning. So, what happens if Roger the renter doesn't actually save the full difference each year? He may think that it's much easier to skip a voluntary contribution to a portfolio than it is to skip a mortgage payment. If Roger only manages to save, say, 50% of the monthly difference between owning and renting, his ending net worth drops to only $334,000. If Roger only manages to save, say, 5% of the monthly difference between owning and renting, he still loses as he ends up with, according to what you can see, the factors, many of which are unknown in advice, have an impact on which technique will eventually be the most effective.